Okay, so I'm tired and I haven't moved yet. And I did some research on NWA, to see if I had that right or not. Because NWA, to my understanding, stood for Niggers with Attitudes. Uh, Niggers. So I looked it up on Wikipedia and it says Niggaz. And then instead of with, wit. And I'm like, wait a minute here. Because I'm old and I actually remember watching people break dance in the park. And I was like, what's. I'm like, okay, that's break dancing. And then I heard rap music for the first time. And I'm like, all that rap music stuff is going to fade away. People will be doing this break dancing stuff for years. So obviously, I'm a great predictor of culture. I also thought the CD was no. I was like, well, CDs? I was like, it's the same music. What difference does it make whether it's on tape or CD? I didn't get the whole big deal about CDs either. So yeah, that's why I don't invest my money on those on future trends, societal trends. But anyways, so I did some research on it, and I actually looked up to see if the guy was black that wrote the article. So this guy is like, I think he writes for the L.A. Times, but I didn't, I didn't. It's a long article, but I looked him up on Wiki, and his name's John H. McWhorter, and I'm like, wait a minute, he might be an Irish white guy, so his opinion won't count. So I looked up John H. McWhorter, and I found out he's an associate professor, and then I saw a picture of him, and I'm like, you know, I don't really. I was like, I better make sure this guy is black before I start talking about it. I don't want to talk about something I don't know about, in case that's what I was doing earlier. So I look up the guy, and and okay, yeah, okay. I made sure the guy was considered black, because me, I don't believe in race. I don't want to go into it, but they had a thing called the Human Genome Project, and they discovered that race is a cultural category, and so I don't even believe in race. It's like when I got my ride home from my appointment uh, the other day, there was a black woman driving me home, and she was talking about being stopped by the police and how one of her sons was like, "You gotta do this and you gotta do that," and the other son was like, "You don't gotta do shit." It was like you should have told that guy to stop by. Was like had that kind of attitude. And I quit dancing around the whole thing. And I was like, listen, honey, it don't matter if you're white or if you're black. If it's the cops, you got to play the game. And I told her my story about how I fit a description, and they didn't say shit to me. They just slammed me over the hood of a car and got me in a hammer lock because I'm a big dude. And I was walking at like 3 a.m. and I guess they had to call on somebody that was in a bad neighborhood, and they had to call on somebody that met my description. So, anyways, I just quit dancing around the whole subject, and I was like, because I was like, man, it don't matter, it's like. I just quit playing, quit playing in the games. And she was like, "Play the game." She liked that phrase, and she said, "I'm gonna tell my son that." It's like you got to play the game. It don't matter, and she liked that. But like, I was fishing this one time, and this dude come up who's considered black, but I don't care about any of that shit. You know, I used the N word in front of black people before. It's like, don't care. If I'm not calling them that, it doesn't matter. And yeah. Anyways, so I'm fishing, and this dude comes up, and we start talking. Just he's like, "Can I fish with you?" And I'm like, "Sure." I'm a white guy and a black guy fishing. So uh, the guy was like, "You ever see that catfish noodling stuff on TV?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Yeah, they stick their hand into 50, 60, 70 pound catfish's mouth, and they let it bite them. And the black guy says, some white dude had to dream that shit up, because there ain't no black guy gonna jump in the water and let a giant fish bite him by the arm and then almost get drowned by it. And I was like, start laughing. I'm like, man, come to think of it, I've never seen a black guy noodling for catfish on TV, because when you noodle for catfish, you go try to find a submerged log or a pipe or something, because they like to hole up in there, and you reach your hand inside their mouth, and then you loop a cord around there that's tied to you, and then lots of times you get bit, and then if you're lucky, you get your hand out of the mouth. Most of the times you get bit, but you get your hand out of their mouth, and then you more or less got a chance of getting drowned by a fish. You use your weight against the fish, and usually fat hillbilly looking dudes do this. But anyways, so um, so when I said that, I'm like, there's some revisionist history going on here, because the way I remembered it, you know, it was ERS with attitude when it came out, and it's like they just changed that all around, and they made it with a Z. And then I'll put a link to the guy's article, but this guy is a learned guy, and maybe he's trying to push his agenda of he has an agenda about concerning the black community or whatever. So maybe he's the guy. I don't know, and I don't really give a shit. But I care enough about what I say to put in the time in the research. So I actually researched my use of that banned word that Al Sharpton and I think Jesse Jackson had a ceremony where they buried the word. Like you can bury words if people want to use them and get rid of it. They actually had a ceremony. I don't know if you remember this, where they ceremonially killed the word Nigger and buried it. I think they had a little coffin or something. I don't remember. It's been too long. But all that shit seems silly to me, especially after the Human Genome Project. See, what happened is um, people go by their eyes, so they see these differences in people, so they start having an excuse to treat a segment of the population like shit and to segregate them. And so they did that to people with darker skin, and so they developed their own culture, and people think that their differences are genetic, where they're really cultural, because anytime you group a bunch of people together, they're going to develop their own way of speaking and their own attitudes and stuff like that. It's the same as evolutionary theory. That's why you got all them weird creatures in Australia, is because they're it's an island, so they have like crazy amount of strange things going on in Australia. The venomous creatures are so common in Australia. I should put up a link to this, but I don't know about you, but I'm scared of spiders. And there's this lady fucking with something called a mouse spider, which is the scariest looking spider I have ever seen. And she's doing it casually, and they run across these deadly spiders like all the time, and she's just like, oh, this is, just like it's no big deal. Meanwhile, I would be like running. But anyways, that's off topic. So, um, like the example I always use is Obama. Okay, you can use Obama. You can use You can use Derek Jeter or whatever. It's like, why do we identify Obama as black, and why does he self-identify as black if he come out of a white mama? It's like, isn't that sexist? Isn't that like saying that black uh, genes or black blood, whatever the fuck you want to call it, if you want to make up this, not, if you want to follow that kind of nonsense thinking, isn't that saying like the male is predominant over the female, but really it's just because he has some black features, and so, we're going by what we see, and not it's not biologically based, and that's probably the way he was treated when he was growing up, so that's treated as a black guy, so that's why he identifies as whatever silly ass term you want to use, African American, black, whatever. I've been hearing the word colored a lot. It's like, are they trying to bring that back? My aid worker used the word color. A couple of these drivers used the word colored. I'm like, yeah, that went out like in the 50s, I think. They started using Negro, and then they started using black, and then they started using African American, and it's like, in my lifetime, yeah, there's been about 4 or 5 changes, you know. It's like I got a disease, and they changed the name of my disease 3 times, so I'm kind of familiar with the whole pattern of the name game. But anyways, I don't believe in any of that crap, and I don't play any games with it. It's like I was explaining to the driver. It's like, man, the police are the police. It's like, you just got to watch how you behave around them. Or I came close to getting my ass busted up good by the cops for acting a fool. Uh, my white blonde haired um, cousin just about got beat up by not knowing how to act around police. It's like, you know you think the police want trouble? They want to get through the fucking day, especially in this day and age, and not be accused of anything, and not have their jobs be in jeopardy, and not get suspended without pay, and they don't want none of this hassle. I'm sure there's plenty of racist cops out there. I'm sure profiling happens. Um, you know, I'm sure there's lots of dickheads in every job. Okay, but the idea, it's an idea that people have latched onto, and my experiences with the police, believe me, have been fucking negative. I guess because I'm white, I do not get to attach that uh, to the color of my skin, you know. But believe me, I've had like one positive interaction with police that I wasn't related to. That's it. The rest of them were bad. One of them, I was really close to getting my ass whooped, and I mean whooped bad. The other one I can think of that was really bad was when I got thrown into a hammerlock and slammed over the hood of a car, and they didn't say shit to me. They jumped out of the car before the car even stopped. They didn't read me my rights. They didn't do nothing. And another time I can think of is like I was walking and I was freezing my ass off, and I didn't have no gloves, and the cops stopped me. And the reason they stopped me is they had a curfew on kids, and they thought I was a kid. And I gave him some lip, and you know, he used a weird expression. He was like, "I don't need no case of ass from you," meaning case of smart ass, I guess. And because he asked me, he wanted to see if I was intoxicated or whatever, and he's like, or if I was in my right mind. And I think he asked me, no, he was asking me questions. And I said, yeah, yeah, yeah. And so is the president, and so is the vice president, and so is the speaker of the house. And I was seeing if I was intoxicated or drunk or whatever. And I was acting like a dick. It's like, if you act wrong around police, they're gonna give you shit. It doesn't matter what you look like. Okay, you might be more likely to be stopped if you're black. It might seem that way to you. I mean, I don't know. I am fish belly white. That's the shade that I come in. So, yeah. But I think there may be some revisionist history going on with the NWA thing, because it happened so long ago. I think the name of the movie that I highly recommend is Straight Outta Compton. I think is the name of the movie. It's a very good movie. And um, it's a pretty long movie. But anyways, I thought I'd clear that up and put a link to the the black professor that claims that it's ERS with attitude. So it's not just me, you know, that I'm not just, I'm, I realize I'm really not part of the culture or whatever, but I go back a ways. So that's the way I remembered it, is like niggers with attitude, you know, and then I look it up on Wiki and it says Z, wit attitudes. And I'm like, I don't really remember it that way, you know. But here's the thing, man. H.P. Lovecraft. You may know that name, you may not. I'm going to assume that you don't, and do a little expostulation. That's a famous horror author. It's like the inventor of the cosmic horror genre, more or less. Wrote the Dunwich Horror, among other things. I think that's his most famous work. Um, oh, he's the Call of Cthulhu. And anyways, so he wrote this book, which is, or story. He doesn't write books. He writes short stories. Um, Called The Rats in the Walls. It's one of my favorite short stories. The name of the cat, the guy has a cat. The name of the cat of the main character is Nigger Man. Okay. You know, he was actually a racist, the H.P. Lovecraft guy. It's a well documented that he was a racist. But you cannot go around changing the past. You can't learn from the past by changing it. So I actually read a version of this guy's book where they changed the name of the cat to Voodoo. And I'm like, I got pissed, man. I got really fucking pissed as a writer, because you do not do that. You do not, you don't change man's work. You know, like, especially fucking 75, 80 years after he's dead, or however long. You know, H.P. Lovecraft goes back to probably 100 years ago. So, you know, it's like calling Nigger Jim and Mark Twain African American Jim. They did a bit about that on Family Guy. It's like, no. You need to look at the past, recognize what it was. You don't go around changing it into something that's more palatable to you. People are going to have these stupid ass attitudes about race regardless. You don't go around changing the past to try to fix things. You know, so that's what got Huck Finn banned from schools and stuff, is they didn't want black kids having to read that. And I think Louis C.K. has a bit about that. You know, he's not going to read Huck Finn to his kids because he's not comfortable with the past. You know, can't tell his kids, like, yeah, people weren't very nice to each other back in the day based on race, and it was accepted. And it's like, you know, Mark Twain, there was freaking I don't know if there were slaves at the time he was writing off the top of my head, but it was pretty damn fresh, and he was writing about times where there were slaves. And the character of Nigger Jim, which, by the way, the main character, Huck, is his best friend and never calls him that and just calls him Jim. And also, Jim is the hero of the story and is a great guy. So, you know, the whole point, it's actually an anti-racist book, but because it has that word in there and people call him that, uh, people label it as a racist book. They don't even bother to read the damn thing. And that's a hopeless world, and it's a hopeless. So people are hopeless, but you know, um, people. I don't think will ever let go of this idea that, like, yeah, you're just going by your eyes. You know, Derek Jeter, you can call him black, you can call him white, whatever. You know, Obama, you can call him white, you can call him black. If he wants to call himself black, let him call himself black. You know, whatever. None of it matters. It's not important. The Human Genome Project showed that the differences between Here's another thing, because I did research on this shit, unlike most people. They used to think that sickle cell anemia was more prevalent in black people. It's and they thought it was because it was more prevalent in black people because they were black. What they found out is that sickle cell anemia is actually occurs more often in black people because black people are more likely to live in areas that have malaria mosquitoes. It's something that evolved in response to malaria. So it has nothing at all to do with race because I had arguments about this stuff, and I did research, and so race is not even a good scientific tool as a category to do any research or to do any. It's not a good indicator of what's going on even. So this idea has been discarded that it has to do with the color of skin. That sickle cell anemia has to do with color of skin. It has to do with people that live in malarial mosquito areas just happen to be mostly of a certain hue, but it had nothing to do with them being that hue. It had to do with the goddamn mosquitoes. So, no, I'm not pulling this shit out of my ass. That sounded horrible. I'm not pulling these things that I'm saying just out of thin air. I did the research. I looked into it. I know words like scientific utility and race as an idea has very little scientific utility, and they discovered this with the Human Genome Project, and they discovered also that a lot of stuff, like the higher cases of involving dietary issues and stuff, it developed culturally because of segregation. Like, I remember eating with this black lady in the Cleveland Clinic, and I have to use the categories, even though I don't believe in the categories, because we're talking about the categorization of human beings. So she's eating all this food I had never seen before, and she's like, I'm asking her about it. And she's like, oh, I'm from the South, and there's more segregation in the South. So she's eating like speckled butter beans and collard greens and all this food, and then a lot of the food is high in cholesterol, so there's a greater deal with blood pressure problems and heart issues and stuff like that in the black community. And I'm sure some of that is brought on by stress from having a painful past inflicted upon them by being culturally segregated and treated like shit. If that stuff takes generations to weed out. The 60s might seem like a long time ago, but that's when I was born. But that segregation was still alive in the 60s. Martin Luther King was shot in the 60s. And that hate and that those ideas, they're going to take time. It's going to take decades to get over that. It's just like when you get hurt personally, it takes a long time to get over it. So when you get hurt culturally as a group, it takes a long time to get past it. It takes a long time for the rest of us to get past of it. That's why we got this thing called white guilt and all this other stuff. It's like I've been the victim of like racism, and like I've had people tell me, you can't be. Somebody told me this. You can't be the victim of racism because you're white. And there was a thing going around in the colleges there for a while that racism can only be attached to power. And since I am white, I am attached to the power structure, and therefore Uh, I cannot have racism inflicted upon me. And I'm like, bullshit. My example I used was like, okay, you got uh, that case where uh, a white kid spit in a black cop sandwich and got because I don't know how did that go. So it doesn't matter what color the cop was. I don't remember, but anyway, somebody with no power who was white because this guy was a cop spit in his sandwich and actually got caught doing it because it was a cop, and so he got in trouble over it. Now, if you tell me if the cop is black and the server is white, are you gonna tell me that that's not a racist act if the kid's doing the spitting because the guy is black? He's he's attached to the power structure because he's white. No, no, no. Racism is about attitudes, like, hating on people. It's in here. It got nothing to do with being attached to nothing else. It's all an individual thing, and it's up here. So when I hear people with this murky, stupid thinking, I don't know what the hell to make of it. But anyways, I just wanted to explain that about the NWA thing, and I used to write that word, and either I think my post got censored, so I had to, you know, um, put N, dot 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 dot, or like asterisk asterisk asterisk, and then R to keep my post from being dropped or whatever. It's like you're not gonna get rid of like racism by censorship. No, you're not gonna like take away the power of a thing by making it the forbidden fruit. You know, uh, that actually you're giving the word more power, and that's another argument that um, people of color, whatever you want to call, there's just people to me, but whatever you want to call black people, African Americans, people of color, whatever you want to call them, that's an argument that they have, is like they're taking the power back of the word by using it. That's like saying, to each other, man, nigga, what you talking about? Or like I used to talk to my mailman, I'd use the word, his name was Kevin, and yeah, he was black. There wasn't no doubt that he would be considered black, but I used the word in front of him. He just laughed, because he knew me. He knew I didn't have that, you know, I wasn't a racist. So it's, the whole thing is stupid to me, and it's just indicative. It kind of makes me feel hopeless for the human race that they think this way, or that people that are actually gone to college can't figure out that racism is in here, that they actually say that white people can't be racist because they're attached to or no, white people can't be the victim of racism because they're attached to a power structure. Okay? I had a black cop stop me and give me a hard time. Um, it wasn't because I was white, but say it was because I was white. The whole thing's so dumb. It's dumb. It's silly. It's like I liken the idea of race to the idea of witches, man. It's all in your goddamn head. It's a silly idea. Okay? That offends. I've already put these ideas online, not in a video, but it offends white people and black people because they like cater that's my teeth. Cater, they like separating themselves up into groups. They like that. They like identifying themselves as a white guy, or as a black guy, or as a Latino. I had a guy get mad at me for um, calling him. He was Puerto Rican, and I think I called him Anyways, it was a shit. Can't remember. But anyways, the point is, the guy was making a distinction between Puerto Ricans and other Latinos, and he got really pissed at me and was calling me a racist, and I'm like, I don't understand. He goes like, well, we're different, you know, and it's like we're not them, and I'm like, well, what's wrong with them? You're the one being racist. You think that that's an insult that I'm referring to you as these other people by mistake because I'm not, I don't pay attention to that kind of thing, you know? But I remember it had something to do with Puerto Rican and Latino, or Puerto Rican and no, it was Puerto Rican and Hispanic, I think, or something. I don't know. It's too long ago. I don't remember. I used to write a lot online, and then I gave it up because I mainly wrote for one purpose, and that was to learn. And then I realized, well, I pretty much learned as much as I could about the topics that I was interested in. So I didn't bother, writing that much on YouTube. I still do it now, but it's just for entertainment. It's not like debate type stuff. I don't know anybody in Amanda, Ohio. How do I shut this fucking thing off? I don't know how to use technology. Anyways, so much for that video. But anyway, yeah. So the whole thing's just, it's all rather silly to me, and the fact that if I use a word, I am suddenly a racist. It's like when I interact with people, like I get that shit out of the way, like right away. It's like this was 2 days ago. No, when did I make that appointment? I don't know. This was within a week ago when I had the black lady driving me home. And to me, she's just a lady. But these categories, they don't mean shit. So I just get it out of the way right away. And I was like, Deborah, that was her name. I was like, it don't matter if you're black or if you're white. You got to play the game when you're talking to the police. Because her one son was telling her, you didn't have to say shit to that cop. The other one was like, no, no, no. And, and she says, I'm going to go home and tell my son that, like she kept saying that. She liked that phrase, you got to play the game. So she said it a couple of times to herself. She says, I'm going to go home and tell my son that, you got to play along. And I said, you got to play along, especially if you're a dude, and especially if you got some size to you, you better play along. That's what I was thinking. But I told her, what I said to her actually was, it especially holds true if you're a dude, because you're liable to get your ass kicked. And it almost happened to me a couple of times. So, anyways, that's the end of my rant. And I don't know what the title is, but yeah. So I'll put the link to that famous black writer, professor guy that agrees with me. But he might be agreeing with me for his own political agendas. Who knows? But I looked up a couple of other articles, and they also said ERS for NWA. But I didn't, mark their website. I'll just plant the one, or plant. I'll just post the one link in the description. It's a long article. It's basically about the effect of. It looks like the effect of just the effect of black culture on black society, I think, is the way you could sum it up. And a lot of it's about rap music. But anyways, adios. Feel free to yell at me and call me a racist, white, supremacist, bastard pig, because that stuff just makes me laugh anyway. Goodbye.